Good to see you. Great to see you, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. She's good. Good to see you. Excited about tonight? Yeah. Good to go.
Charlie, your name is Smith.
Okay. So good. On the right track.
Mr. Mayor, how was your Easter? How was your Easter? Okay. I know. Bad. You know, I don't have blue blazer Good afternoon. Good early evening, everybody. I want to call to order the West Ashley Revitalization Commission meeting of April the 17th. I'm sorry, April the 17th. 18th. I'm trying to go back. You know, when you get to my age, you want to go back a couple of days if you can. And I appreciate everybody coming to downtown, and we're not West Ashley. As County Councilmember Moody has pointed out to me, he's been inviting me about meeting in person, and for our first meeting back, we were not West Ashley, we were downtown. But that is because some of the venues that we're looking for were taken up or closed because today is Easter Monday, and some of our traditional churches and houses of worship, which wouldn't be open to us, are closed because they've taken the day off. God bless them. I'm sure they needed that vacation. Which probably reinforces why we need to proceed with the plans that we're going to be talking about today of having a facility in West Ashley. A couple of announcements from our sponsors. First of all, if you're not aware, the West Ashley Farmers Markets kicks off in the year at Ackerman Park, beginning Wednesday at 3 o'clock. It's open from 3 to 7. Please patronize our local farmers and vendors there. It is an exciting location, and your participation and support of that is greatly appreciated. It's just a wonderful amenity to have West Ashley. It's right off of Sycamore. I'm in St. Andrews Boulevard. So if I could put a plug in for all the work that our city staff does for the farmers market, please participate with that. Come down there 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Vegetables and food there is excellent. It runs until November the 2nd. So beginning Wednesday to November 2nd. And Mayor Tecklenburg has got some really wonderful news for us. Oh, good. Don't you?
Thank you.
He has found, I understand, some Easter eggs that are gold.
We found some golden Easter eggs this morning. I did want to share with everyone that the Ashley River Bike Ped Bridge project future is secure and moving forward. And the difficulty has been with escalating construction costs. You know, our first estimates were done when we first applied for this grant almost 5 years ago. So to say that pricing has changed a little bit is an understatement. So we had a meeting this morning of what they call chats with the regional highway authority of the COG and with the support, in fact, Secretary Hall, Christy Hall came down from Columbia for the meeting because she supports this solution to the challenge. They approved $14 million to supplement our budget to make sure we're going to have enough money to get the project done. And that was great news. And we're going to be on schedule to get the final RFP out by September and a contract awarded by early next year to build the thing. So again, its future is secure, which I wanted to share with everyone.
Yeah, it's excellent news. And I think that, as the mayor said, we've been working on this for the past 5+ years, and our partners with county council as well, their participation with the funding. This is a great project. So Mayor, thank you for seeing that through and getting that little extra pocket change that we needed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did that. We're going to talk about just one issue tonight. This is a special meeting. We normally meet on a Wednesday, but we wanted to make this rollout, this preliminary rollout of our Sumar Street project. This is the project known as the former Piggly Wiggly site. It's located at the tip where intersection of Highway 7 and 171 meet. Sumar Street is to the other side of this property. Piggly Wiggly was there as long as I can remember. The city purchased this property in August of 2017, which is a smidgen over $3 million. And we've been doing this project constantly since 2016. We've been working on this. So we've got some preliminary designs that we're going to go through. Eric, did you want to give any more of a lead into what I've just stated, or?
Yes.
This is Eric Coleman, our West Ashley project manager, and the person who I call and like more than anybody else on city staff. So Eric, good sport.
So you kind of took my first 3 slides there, but yes. So I'm going to just give a quick overview again for the general public who will be watching this, hopefully on YouTube or at home, or who are here in person. So as Councilman Shade said, so we've been working on this since 2018. This is a timeline that I keep up with in terms of all the efforts that we've been putting into this site. As you can see, it's getting pretty tiny on the screen now. It has been going on since 2017 when we purchased it, and a lot of what we've been doing is also working with the county when it comes to the Sumar Street or the Sam Rittenberg Old Town intersection. So that was a solid year to year and a half of our work. But shortly after the city demolished the property, about 2 months later, we did a very robust online and in-person public information campaign, getting a bunch of ideas from the general public in terms of what should happen at this location. We also had a 2-day workshop where our urban design department here actually sat down with anyone who walked in and would draw whatever they thought should go on the site. So we had, as you can see, we had quite a large amount of different design iterations on this parcel. In terms of the online survey, we had about 927 respondents over 31 days. 733 of them were residents of West Ashley. For the most part, what they wanted was to be able to walk and bike and take transit in the area. That was the majority of people at 72% saying that. They also wanted to see increased landscaping, better landscaping and beautification elements in this area. And then one of the most important items to them was the intersection should be improved to allow all modes to travel through there, but especially vehicles to continue personal vehicles to travel through there in a very safe and convenient manner. And then when we asked what should go there, 61% of the respondents said a passive park, 50% said a small scale retail, 49% said restaurant. And then we had a lovely question on there. It was a fill in the blank. And it was, what is your big idea? And a lot of people's big ideas were public green spaces, retail, traffic transportation improvements, mixed use traditional neighborhood, make it look like the workshop, put green space for families out at this site. Make sure it has civic or cultural uses. There was a big push by a group to have a wooden dance floor for dance events or other musical venues for Spoleto. Not very many people said residential, and a few people said things such as it should just be aesthetically pleasing and useful. So the recurring phrases and words we got from those surveys were it needs to be safe, beautiful, family friendly, have gardens, parks, green spaces, and be able to host events. With all that information, the city distilled that down into a conceptual program of having a passive park, small scale retail, restaurant, commercial and civic cultural space. And we worked out some general square footages that we thought would be good on site. So it would be about 18% or 18,000 square feet of built space, 10,000 square feet of open green space. With that, we entered in with the county when they were going through their realignment efforts to show how the program could continually be adapted to what would happen at the intersection. And then we showed it some more with the, so the county started out, I think you guys had 6 or 7 options, and then it came down to 4, and then it came down to 2, and then the county opted to go, instead of trying to realign the roadway, we shifted focus to instead making the intersection improved and safer for all in its current built way, and that's going to include having, I'll talk about that a few slides later, but after the county opted to go with the no build for the realignment, the city released an RFQ for the general public to, for the commercial sector to come in and do a partnership with us. This was our imagined site plan for the area to kind of tease out the commercial sector for what could go here. And on it, it shows exactly the program that we had wanted, which was passive park, a civic cultural space, and then small scale retail and offices, I believe. And then after the RFQ, that is when Landmark and Leolio came in. They were our development partner that came through the RFQ process. I'm pretty sure they were, given the diagram that they first submitted to us, they were excited by the fact that this area is surrounded by residential. It has good, solid commercial uses around it already. So those are 2 elements that they want to have for their private sector development. And then in addition to that, there's Charlestown Landing and the Old Town County Creek park that's going to be coming in for public investment in the area. They went through and did some design sketches to see what they could fit on the site. And this is what they came back with. Their proposal was actually to increase past what we thought could go there. They believe that we can fit about 60,000 square feet of different use items, of 20,000 for the civic function. That would be both in terms of the auditorium as well as offices for the city, 30,000 square feet of office, 10,000 square feet of retail and restaurant. This was presented to the West Ashley Commission in May of 2020. We went through several discussions about where the built environment should go on the site. And throughout the hour and a half discussion, we kept coming back to Sam Rittenberg as the preferred option. There was no formal vote taken, but we felt since this was the option that was most appealing to the commissioners, this is the one that our development partner should go with. And then August 2020, shortly after that, the county re-released its plan for the Sumar intersection, Old Town Road, Sam Rittenberg area. This time focusing in, instead of realigning roads, and improving what's already there and making it much more bike and pedestrian friendly, along with doing a lot more traffic calming when it comes to plantings along the road and installing some street lights that are needed right now. And in terms of that, I got this update this morning from the county. So they are currently working on preliminary plan set, which means it'll be designed out to about 30% completion. It's anticipated to advertise in late 23, early 24 for construction. They're designing it where it can be split into 2 phases, but we are hoping that we'll be able to secure the funding to make it all built out at once. If it is split into those 2 phases, right now, County Public Works is anticipating Orange Grove and the actual scissor merge of Sam Rittenberg and Old Town will be the first elements to be redesigned and rebuilt. And then phase 2 would actually be Old Town Road, Sam Rittenberg, and Sumar Street, so further down towards Charlestown Estates Drive. So this was the RFQ square footages that was submitted to us. And what happened was, you'll notice that it says March of 2020 on there. So we were very optimistic at the beginning of March for what could occur here. We have had to go back through with Landmark, and we retooled the amount of private sector space that'll be coming in. So they shifted some around from being in the office to being more retail and restaurant. And they did end up taking about 10,000 square feet off of the private sector investment. The city investment has remained steady at 12,000 for what we're calling civic space. So that's going to be flexible auditorium, so we can host meetings like this and city council in. Also other various size conference rooms, professional furnished conference rooms that we do not have available to the public right now. And then city offices at about 8,000 square feet. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to.
This is our Landmark partner.
Okay. I'd like to start by just thanking everybody for the time tonight, thanking everybody for this opportunity. And this is not something that this is an opportunity we have not taken lightly. This is a project that we understand is very important to the community, very important to the city, and it has been a long time coming. Great overview by Eric on that. I mean, we've definitely put the time in, and I think you'll see tonight as to what we've been able to do with that time. It really is an exciting thing. What we have learned about this project is, from the opportunity, is what we want to do is create something that's an amenity for the community. That's the important thing here, is create gathering space where, you know, there's something for each and every one. And we can create restaurants and offices that you can live and play at this location. And in this small area of West Ashley, it's a gathering place where the community comes together and has outdoor events and has barbecue cook-offs and car shows, and you name it. We can have an event here with live music, movie nights for the family with an ice cream vendor, or a brick oven pizza restaurant to gather in, bring the families of West Ashley together in this community, and just tie it all together. And so, over the last year, we have pivoted a little bit of our original concept, but at the end of the day, what has remained true is that we're trying to create a place. We're trying to create something that is an amenity for this community that everybody can be proud of and gather together and socialize together. And so I would like to say that one of the things about this project is that we have had what I would say is a pleasant process with the city. We have great collaboration. I can't say enough about the mayor's office, Councilman Shea, Eric and his team. Everybody as part of this process is hands-on, has been fully dedicated to this. And as it has taken some time, I think you'll be excited about what you see tonight. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our architect, Enos Leolio with Leolio Architecture, who has put together the design you're about to see. So,
well, to say that we're delighted to be here and bring you up to speed on everything is an understatement. This is what you will see today is a slice in the evolution of the design. We are not at the end yet. We certainly are somewhere in the middle as far as it relates to the continuing evolution of the design process. But we wanted to share with you where we were at as we continue the refinements that we worked through. And one of the first aspects that we did as we began the design was to bring together, again, an opportunity to reinvigorate the neighborhoods and the communities and discuss what were the key elements still within the context of infusion within the design. And these slides right here are somewhat of an indication of what really were the center points of all the dialogue. The civic lawn, which was an important piece of the gathering place for everyone. The aspect of rooftop access, which is pretty non-existent to an extent in the West Ashley area, and bringing that in to this development as well. The idea of outdoor dining, which is creating kind of that European sense of togetherness and collaboration. And of course, pedestrian friendly. Whatever we do needed to be pedestrian friendly. So all of these four elements were components to ensure that we're a part of the ongoing evolution. So the site plan is evolving, as you saw what Eric was presenting and where we're at right now. Is there a pointer on this?
The red button.
I'm afraid to touch anything. And of course, you can't see the red button. That's all right. If you can imagine for a moment, the Old Town to your right, Sam Rittenberg to your left. And what we felt was most important was that the civic community function be at the apex, much like the civic design centers the charrette process produced. So building one, for instance, that you see is the gathering place, the assembly area, where hopefully in the next year and a half or so, we might be meeting there to give you all an update on everything. Building two is the office building, ground level, being more towards civic conference spaces, small meeting areas, the upper two floors being devoted to the city staff. Building three, restaurants, as you can see, flanking the interior. I'm sorry, it's hard for you to talk without moving my hands. Building three is flanking the internal pedestrian area right here, which is kind of an effort to evoke that emotion of the European, the Italian, the Greek, small street areas where people can
Leave out the Lebanese, Tino.
Yes, of course. We're all inclusive here. And then four is a small retail space, five being the office space. A couple of important things as we look through this is that we wanted to make sure that there was transparency, both on the external aspects of Old Town and Sam Rittenberg, but also through the space. So this, for instance, is an axis that was extremely important to us. So someone who is standing over here can see all the way through to the other end of the development, for instance. We have sustainable issues. Charleston Rises was an important component of our ongoing design discussions. So consequently, the idea of the stormwater retention and how we're doing that, the aspect of the indigenous vegetation that we're going to be incorporating within all the landscaping. Also the aspect of how the buildings begin to relate to the various orientations. So you will see that all in just a moment as we walk through some of the presentations. The key aspect here is that that we heard from the mayor and from Councilman Shade and everybody that parking as a demand could not go vertically up. So we had to accommodate all the parking in a manner that would not be an issue as far as visual aspects are concerned. So what we ended up doing is that we have subterranean parking, that we will go down below, and we'll show that in just a moment, down below the building area right here, parking for roughly 230 parking spaces. We're using something that you have, the city council has adapted recently, which is the ability to utilize the ULI parking calculator as we accommodate the parking demands. Jason and Jonathan have been balancing the aspect of parking need. And of course, when we're sitting there going, maybe you don't need this much parking, they're telling us restaurants require a lot of parking, retail requires parking, office space requires parking. So consequently, there's a roughly 230 parking spaces that we're accommodating on the site. And we're doing that roughly through the subterranean aspects. This sunken garden here is a visual component, not only to deal with the stormwater collection, but also the aspects of the visual entry and identity for the site. So this is kind of what our subsurface subterranean parking area looks like. The blue area here is our underground storage. It's not going to be all of that space. It will be underground stormwater retention, but we wanted to make sure that we provided enough aspect and space for it. Sorry, I'm stealing all your thunder, but no, you might want to talk a little bit about that as well.
You're fine. No, we're working with Spain Tech currently to work on balancing the needs for underground storage with parking. So it's been a constant back and forth So currently on the site plan, you'll enter from the south here and access this underground below the structures. The thought is that we'll be excavating below the buildings as is. So while we have that earth removed, we can best utilize that space. And jumping back one slide, the other piece tied into the ULI and the parking that we've been looking at is number one, we're looking with the ULI, we're looking to utilize ride share, have a drop off, a loading zone for pedestrians looking to get a ride home via Uber or Lyft, whatever it might be. And the other piece is looking at the potential site of having an additional bus stop here along Sam Rittenberg.
So when we translate all of this, we started with the volumetric study of how the spaces would begin to look when they're taken vertically out. But this begins to give you a sense that what we're doing is basically bookending the development with three-story structure on one side, three-story structure on this side, and two-story and one-story structures that are mingled in between. And then we began to play with form. And one of the key aspects that we're also looking at is how do we provide this wonderful green space for people to congregate? And if you've been on the site, you know how noisy Old Town and Sam Rittenberg are collectively. So we figured that if we could utilize the building form to an extent to help us an acoustical barrier, and we will have other barriers to help us along that way as well, that it would begin to give us a defined space of an outside plaza area. We'll also note that there are connectors that pierce the openings, for instance, for the bus stop that Tom was just talking about. There is an entryway right there into the complex, so that it makes it easy for those who may be riding the bus can access. There will be bicycle storage, considering what is all happening right now with improved North Bridge as far as cycling and everything is concerned. We'll be accommodating all of that as well. But this kind of gives you a sense of the evolution from a form study. And of course, above grade stormwater retention is a fine designation of some of the sustainable issues that are being integrated. I mean, that's one thing that the mayor specifically asked us to do, is to provide a building that not only responded, but also educated. So all of those items are being evolving as we're walking through all of this. So then we took it to some sketching.
So jumping off what Eric said earlier, hearing all of the different program precedents, as Jason said, all of the programs we're looking to have on site, whether it is a car show or a farmer's market, we began to look at these precedents, look at similar locations and try to work backwards to better understand what might be needed in terms of architecture, plannings, green space, everything down to AV, IT, just to start the conversation and get ideas flowing. So as you can see on the top left, we started looking at it from a balcony view. Imagine you're looking down off into the public lawn area. So giving it some thought, thinking through, if it was a farmer's market, what would you need to have that be a complete success from a project standpoint? So we started looking into it, and one area we immediately arrived at is we need some form of a stage. If it's a music venue, if it is an outdoor movie night, say, as is in the top right here, we started noticing, we need a raised stage, some raised viewing areas adjacent to the public green, and to really push and utilize these restaurant and retail components that could potentially overlook both from the second floor and from the ground floor. So as Dina's mentioned earlier, we've got areas that we've started initially sketching on, getting a better idea of these areas between buildings that connect back to Sam Rittenberg, and not only using those as interstitial space between buildings, but how to properly program that to just add to the overall ambience that we're looking for here.
And Jason is adamant that he's going to be the first one at the chili cook-off, right? Okay, I've been for a lot about chili cook-offs. So then we translated this into a little bit more as far as form studies are concerned. And one of the comments that came out, you won't see it tonight necessarily because we're still working on it, was some type of vertical structure that might be incorporated within the context of the site. We're talking about, again, the ability to communicate both vertically and horizontally as far as people seeing and talking to each other. We're talking about fun spaces. We're talking about gathering places that can provide maybe a farmer's market location on a Saturday or an art show on a Saturday. All of these things began to evolve. That took us to the next evolution. Now, as we get into the next stage, one of the things that we really strive for, that we feel are three main components as far as architecture from our standpoint, is context, culture, and collaboration. The collaboration, seeing Ann walk in right now, in meeting with the neighborhood, was an important component in helping us understand what was going on with everything. But truthfully, from a contextual standpoint, there is really nothing to draw upon from an architectural standpoint, the language that's there. So we figured that as you see these series of slides coming up, that the architectural side would be simple. Simply stated, trying to provide some language, maybe for future developments, and maybe some elements that would provide a sense of minimal materiality, of masonry, steel, wood accents, etc. So that's what we drew upon as from a contextual standpoint. And then from a cultural standpoint, Tom did all kinds of studies looking for something that would be culturally significant to the site. And there really isn't, other than the fact that I wheelbarrowed bricks there when the original Piggly Wiggly was built. We didn't figure that was significant enough. So we are beginning to look at architecture in this format. And there are some issues that we think are important. First of all, the three-story section at the end provides a cantilever, a boldness, an innovative aspect that we feel represents the ongoing evolution of West Ashley. And we can reflect that in the architecture. We extracted volume out of the corner and created balconies there. What a wonderful place if you're in any of the city offices or whatever, that you have the opportunity to step out and look a little bit more on a different scale as far as West Ashley is concerned. The aspect of division with respects to, I was telling you, the transparency of the entire site, where you can see from this end all the way to the other end. We're working right now, we're not showing it right now because we actually ran out of real estate to an extent. But we're looking at a vertical piece that would be coming up here that you might see as you're crossing North Ashley River Bridge. It's a point that's in evolution at this point in time. And of course, the ongoing demonstration of sustainable issues such as the stormwater towers. There are how many oaks along this side? No. 9 oaks along North Bridge that we're trying to retain as we go through the aspect. We're talking to arborists right now and seeing what we can possibly do with that. But then again, you can see it's just a minimal expression as far as the structure, but we feel that with some boldness and expression of the architecture, it might begin to define what we're talking about. Looking from Savannah Highway North, again, and again, an evolution. This is not the final facades, but this is showing the overstated size of the fenestration, the location of the bus stop and how it works off of the Sam Rittenberg. The really neat aspect of a coffee shop that extends here to the base with outdoor dining on the top. You can get a sense of some of the outdoor dining that's being suggested again on the rooftops. And this is the beginning of the sense of what that pedestrian mall area would be. Outdoor dining. There's going to be additional landscape along this wall here that begins to provide a little bit of sense of lighting the seating out there. But we've, at this point in time, we're being very patient and very careful how we begin to express that. We're also looking at use of balconies here for dining on the second floor. We're looking at the possibility of creating this little Juliet balconies off the second level so that somebody, Kenneth, is standing up there yelling down at me to order a beer from the place below. You know, just the idea of communication and encouraging those aspects of
This is over by the assembly building, so the civic assembly is to the right. So what you're seeing here is the stage area that's overlooking the public green here. So one of the aspects that we've really been trying to push is the linear corridor that runs between the two buildings and how that terminates into the building itself. Overall giving a destination and a termination to the kind of progress and movement through the site. But you can see here on both flanking sides, we've worked to raise this up slightly to give anybody who's on either this terrace within these buildings or within any of the kind of pocket parks that we're looking at, give them a clear view of what's happening, have it all read as one, and have everyone be within the site and get kind of a piece of the action here. What you can see through here is SAM-RIT, so we're still looking and studying how the plant material and the landscape architecture can act as a buffer between SAM-RIT to help mitigate some of the noise. We've also started looking at sidewalls, how that could potentially tie into the building as well. But overall, this is a great image to look at. And if you remember back to the previous precedent slides and remember back to what Eric was saying earlier with the ideas and the language that the community was after, this is our kind of culmination of what we're shooting for here, is to have a central location, family friendly, with plenty of outdoor seating for an event space specific to West Act.
And then finally, just another view as well of this area, and you can begin to get the sense how important the elevation changes were within the courtyard to give people the opportunity of different vistas as to what they're looking at. And the thought of Friday night movies out here, which would be like your Saturday night movies or whatever activity, Keith Waring and the Madman Band or whatever that I'm pulling for you, Keith. On your groupie. But it's just, I think it can be, it will evolve into a fun spot with the amenities that are provided. And kudos to Jason and Jonathan, as we've shared with a couple of people earlier, they have been completely infused and integrated within the context of this ongoing evolution. And it's been a wonderful and honored process to have done this. Again, it's just, if we're in the middle, there's more to do. We realize that there's more refinement that needs to be done. We're having, it's just been a wonderful time exploring the possibilities. Certainly wanted to give you an update and let you see where we were at this point in time.
Thank y'all very much for the presentation. I'm gonna make a few comments and then I'm gonna open up to questions and comments from members of the commission. Eric had touched upon this, and I think we just need to keep this in perspective. One of the components of this area is the work that we've been doing with the county on addressing the issues with Sumar Street, Sam Brittenberg, Old Town Road, and the other streets and roads that feed into this area in particular. You can't see it on the screen, but Southgate comes right next to this property. And there are other, Dickens Street and Amberley Street touch upon this as well. Further down is Donahue. Part of this project is also going to include from the county a bicycle pedestrian path that cuts through from Orange Grove Road down to Sam Brittenberg. And so part of this project, and we're looking at it from a global view of how the community can take full advantage of all this. And I think that's what Dinos has been talking about, is this community concept. And connectivity is a key buzzword we heard throughout the West Ashley Plan project that we had worked on for several years. So this bike path, the Amberley improvements, the crosswalks that are going to be engaged on all of this, redefining some of these intersections to make them safer and calming traffic down is all part of this general concept. So we're at this point, and the directions that Landmark has been receiving and their partners have been receiving is understanding the overall global view of what we want to do with this project. It's not just a target with we're trying to shoot something at and ignore the other components that need to be addressed. And I'm going to steal a little bit of Councilmember Waring's thunder because he and I have talked about this consistently. This property is the gateway to the birthplace of South Carolina. There's a gateway to the birthplace of Charleston. We can't ignore that. Right off of this, what feeds into this area is Interstate 26, Cosgrove Avenue. And when we're talking about some issues dealing with the improvements on North Bridge, we know that this is going to be this is one of the most heavily trafficked areas in the county. I forgot what the exact traffic count is in the morning and the afternoon, but this is a very heavily traveled area. And so what we're doing here is making sure that we are putting the city flag planted at this location and saying, you are in the city of Charleston. You're not just in West Ashley, but you're in the city of Charleston. You're at the location where the state began, where the city began. We're making a statement of some sort. And the other thing is I wanted to comment on is that while the city has invested our traditional property amenities in West Ashley, which is fire stations and police related activities and parks and playgrounds, this project is going to be one of the defining moments of the city's investment in West Ashley. It is a critical area that we want to make sure we get this right. And this is important because for all the reasons I just stated about this location and the city's investment into this project. So there's a lot of behind the scenes underlying issues that I think we just need to take into consideration as we're going through the development of this project and we're going through this conceptual design. I think that they have captured it. I appreciate what we have seen so far, and I appreciate the collaborative effort that all of us have made with this project. So I just want to make those opening comments, and before I open it up to questions, comments, suggestions from members of the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. Hope I didn't take too much air out of the room with those comments. Councilmember Waring.
Mr. Leolio, could you come back up to so you can use your hands again? Hypothetically, I mean, I love the village concept. I love the but getting back to what Councilman Shahid said and taking a global view, to me, the global view comes in from the North Bridge. Right now, when we go downtown on Lockwood to Broad, we go over and see the waterway. You know, coming on the North Bridge now, you have to look around the wild growth. One of the best views we have there is what God has given us that expands to the marsh and the river. Just cleaning up that vista on the regular. We've done it intermittently. We haven't done it consistently. As you hit Sam Rittenberg, in between Sandhurst and Sam Rittenberg, that side is just very nice mature trees there. Just cleaned up, and I don't mean cut up, I mean trimmed up. Mulch. When you get to this point of Old Town Road and Sam Rittenberg, I would hope, and this is what Councilman Shahid and I have been talking about over time, you would get the feeling of you have arrived. Birthplace of South Carolina, but a lot of people coming off of 26 headed to the gardens, they have to come through that area to get to Drayton Hall, Magnolia, etc. So that wow factor or arriving to this portion of the city of Charleston right now on that point is missing. I don't mind sharing what Councilman Shahid talked about tonight and others. When you go to Savannah, there's a park called Forsyth Park, and they've got a wonderful fountain. And when you go to Chicago and some of the places downtown in New York, they got these wonderful fountains. We certainly a peninsula sticking into the Atlantic. It'd be great if we could have some sort of water feature that calming water. It's beautiful, state of the art right there. And if you were king for a day and you didn't have to park on the site, what other imaginations could be opened up from the standpoint of green space and public spaces in the middle of the courtyard? Now, this courtyard, I'm assuming, could be larger if you did not have to park. I mean, not to answer it now, but I mean that imagination that could be opened up if the mayor goes back to the chat and all 13 council members, rest of the council members.
Wait a minute.
We got the one-time money coming from the state, ARPA monies. Hypothetically, if there was a parking could be secured, I don't want to say it right now, but parking could be secured off the site. What other creativity could come from the standpoint of quality of life inside that triangular space? And I think I'd just like to offer that, not for an answer today.
No, the idea, first of all, I would love to find that chicken mayor that lays those golden eggs. You know, the idea of, we talked about the transparency through the space. What an interesting way to potentially terminate that axis with a water feature that could really be striking and that may actually end up being more of a theatrical how you might work with the water and fountains and things such as that. I mean, one of the things that we had been talking about really was that tower. And we just could not, I tell you that we ran out of real estate. The last sketching that we were doing, the tower was actually in the DOT right of way. We just wish we had a little bit more space. And that's not to say we couldn't go to DOT, but the idea of a vertical feature there that you can see from the North Ashley River Bridge would be wonderful. And we're still working on that. We took a drone out there and how high, the wind caught it, of course. We learned you need a heavy drone. But we realized that you did an estimate of the height. About 120 feet up vertically before you could really begin to get a sense of the river and a variety of other things, which may be a little bit high as far as this is concerned. But so we're still exploring that, but I think the water feature is a wonderful concept. Certainly continue to pursue that. And we were talking earlier, Donna was talking about the strength of the art culture in the West Ashley area and how interesting it might be to be able to incorporate some type of artistic element within the context of a flowing water. I mean, this is to us, and I think you just nailed it exactly. This needs to be a demonstration of the evolution of what West Ashley is becoming, a bold, a very courageous, a very substantial, a very well-founded, a strong foundation community. And that's what we're trying to portray. The other thing that I might mention very quickly is signage that we've been talking about. And I don't know what this will end up being called, but there are plenty of opportunities, for instance, on this facade right here, where you might have, I know we're working in the context of zoning, but maybe some signage begins to be appearing there. And the idea that we had with that regard is that whereas there's a formality to these structures, West Ashley is still casual. There's a casual sense about West Ashley. So the idea of how signage might be placed within here, you can begin to pick up that sense of casual environment within the pedestrian area. But we will certainly put more thought into the aspect of if there was no parking, what else could be imagined here?
Right now, you have how many parking spaces?
We have a total of with the subterranean and the surface parking, 230. Roughly.
Thank you. Councilmember,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you.
This with the fountain, I like the idea too, as well, Keith, with the fountain. Miss Hamilton will tell you about how well our friends drive in West Ashley. With things that are close up to the road.
Yes.
So I would caution about getting too close, but just a couple of things, just in your mindset, was your work just sort of like, no budget, this is what I'd like, this is what should happen at this property. We'll worry about budget and land leases and all that stuff later. Is that sort of what drove your scope to date?
Well, we were still very conscious of budget. Jason has been making sure of that. I think what was driving it more is how do we capture a sense of what constitutes an entry point to the West Ashley area? And when you look along West Ashley, it's a great question. West Ashley is predominated by masonry structures. That's what kind of brought us to the idea of using masonry as the main. But we also know that we're going to probably go through a variety of moderations as far as looking at the design as we go forward. But that's really what drove the exterior material.
Well, and I really appreciate the creativity of subterranean parking. That way, that's great. I mean, our friends in Northbridge Terrace told us they did not want to look at hulking structures outside their neighborhood. And I think I'll wait to hear from Ann and others, but I think you've captured that, keeping the commercial side on the Sam Brittenberg side, which I really appreciate. I think there's going to have to be a lot of discussion down the line with the attorneys and we're talking about land leases. You're an old developer. I'd love to hear what Justin's thoughts are, but how do we long-term land leases, spec buildings? I mean, you're going to pre-lease and I'd love to get into all those weeds at some point. Maybe not the time of the day, but those are things we need to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get to that point. But not so we'll build on what you just said about Northbridge, because my neighborhood association president is here tonight, and it was a very conscious decision to put that scale of building on the Sam Brittenberg side and not the Northbridge Old Town Road side, just for the exact reasons I think Councilman Maludi, you just pointed out. That's very critical for the community to understand the sensitivity that we're experiencing and exercising with this project. Justin.
I appreciate the developer and the architect's time on this, and it seems to reflect a lot of the feedback. I mean, as you think about the gateway to West Ashley, I absolutely think that there needs to be development here. Part of the reason is because I think there's so much traffic on either side. The notion of this just being a park, like there's gonna be so much humming. This isn't a place where you're gonna say, like, let my kids play on either side of just do fly-by traffic. So I think you've done a good job of creating buildings that decelerate the noise and sort of block and provide something inner that can be usable. I think the entry is a mile away at the bridge. And I think if the city were to think about an investment, some medians, some trees that welcome and give you a sense of arrival before you get to this, not to make this secondary, but to set the table for the main course. Not to jump out ahead of what everyone's saying, because I love the design, and this isn't meant to get too much in the weeds, but the intention is there's an agreement with the developer for them to work on designs to get to a point to then negotiate a long-term land lease.
Yes, sir.
Look, I'll say this, and I might be preaching the choir with development. Charleston's one of the hardest places in the world to develop, and I've developed in Berkeley, California, where I had people chain themselves to trees, and I had a lawsuit where the plaintiff was Mother Earth et al. So, but in Charleston's harder, and that's a wonderful thing. But I also think part of it is the surprising curveballs that happen with regard to architecture, starts and stops. And so what I'd hate is the money that's been allocated to the developer to get to the finish line, and then we throw curveballs. And so I do think there needs to be some acceleration of back and forth iterative feedback on the economics. Because I'm looking at the 60,000 square feet. You know, Jace could tell you this, but a lender will lend against speculative multifamily. But a lot of lenders today want 50% pre-leasing, commercial, of office or retail. This is all that. Of the 60,000, 40%, I think, was city. So I guess my question is, it looks beautiful and wonderful by burying the parking, you know, that triples or quadruples the cost of each parking space. Is this, how do we make it not impossible for something to happen here? Because I want something to happen here. How do we get to the finish line where we accelerate conversations of what can the city afford these pre-lease spaces that isn't breaking the city's budget? But also that conversation is deferred so much that Jason and Dinos aren't throwing everything we're throwing out there at our heart's desire, that they then waste the money that we've granted them to get to the finish line, and they've drawn exactly what we said, and then they tell us it doesn't work. How do we start a conversation with you where we make something here? So it's not so we don't just have a dead pig. You know, we have an alive project.
Yeah, I can respond to that. I mean,
Go ahead.
The development agreement is, we're expecting our first draft.
Good microphone for the, thank you, sorry, to interrupt. Sorry.
Hey, Justin, spoken like a true developer, and we understand where you're coming from, because we put a lot of, energy and time into this project, and we're excited about it. And so, yes, we agree. We should, all be working on the economics of this. We are working on a draft of the development agreement. And so that process has started.
I remember the bounds, it touches Sam Rittenberg. If out parking?
It can.
Okay.
TIF district, yeah.
Correct.
And the TIF reimburse. And reimburse you for parking and activation?
I'm not
Part of
able to
the
really speak to that.
TIF language does speak to structured parking being allowed reimbursable use.
Any public improvement, actually, public infrastructure could be reimbursed. We should have an update, by the way, late spring from the county as to how the TIF district is performing. And, we're going to be digging in numbers.
Absolutely.
Pretty soon.
We have a contractor that's been side by side with us this entire design iteration. They've been helping us, keep things, from a design standpoint, from a cost standpoint. And so, one thing I would like to mention is that, we did take a step back and try to evaluate, I'll say the cost of one level of below grade parking. And I think I'm not trying to be short-sighted when I say this, but I do think we miss by having to cut our program by more than half. It really loses that kind of experience and that placemaking opportunity to really create something special here versus just have, just something that's much more diluted and not as impactful. So, and to talk to, the site plan for a second, the parking in itself is an extension of that lawn. Those events can spill into the parking area that we close off as well. The restaurants are an extension of the lawn overlooking the music or whatever event that's happening there. All of this has been carefully thought out to be as efficient as it can get so that we can get as much on site for the community as possible.
Burial and conceptuals.
Yeah, so right now we are in schematic, I guess, from, you want to take that from.
We're in the middle of conceptual, working toward preparing.
Dinos, you get a little closer.
Yes, we are in the middle of schematics right now, working toward preparation to go before plan review committee and design review board. So consequently, hard work on
I think to be prudent of the budget the city's already granted your way, but also judicious of your time and prudent. That perhaps the conversation of a ground lease and pre-leasing happened after, SDs and before DDs, because
Yeah, I mean, the process that we've outlined in the MOU is that, I think, my opinion, unless I'm told differently, is kind of the process that we need to go down, which is we've compressed the schedule to get to a cost. And so we are going to be pricing this off of a DD set, and we're coming to a GMAX with our contractor on a that's how we're going to kind of get to I'll say an agreement faster, so that we don't get to that 100% set of CDs and folks get surprised in some sense. That was our approach.
I get, and look, I'm not saying let's accelerate it so we can beat you up and make less. I'm saying I don't want folks to have heartburn at how the math works, because this is a wonderful thing, but despite the fact that developer has a connotation, like this is an expensive project that's going to need public sector help. I mean, no one chooses to put the parking underground. No, like it doesn't work. So I'm wondering if maybe there's more iterations sooner where you're explaining what it looks like rents are going to need to be, so that the city understands ground lease is X, and maybe also the TIF needs to be X, and God forbid, what about the Bailey bill kind of thing, because this is for an open book. How can this work so it can be an amenity?
We're as open-minded, transparent as the mayor and the council members would like us to be, and however we can get to a decision point faster, we're all ears.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks. Mayor, want to make a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Jason and Dinos and your teams for fine work so far. I think it's evident that they've been very thoughtful, that they've been listening not only to the commission and the past comments that have come forth over that history that Eric outlined, but even recently to the community. I thank you for that. And I think you've got the uses about right, the right mix of uses. And I love the focus on building a sense of place and a gathering place for the community, and so many wonderful things that can happen on the site. I know you said, Dinos, a number of times that it's a work in progress, and you ran out of real estate on that front portion. If you need some help with Secretary Hall, not for a big check, but we need a little more of their right of way or something, I'll be glad to go to bat. And because I do concur completely, and I think everyone does, that iconic entrance to the building needs to make a statement. And maybe it's a vertical feature, maybe it's a water feature, I'm not sure, but it needs to be substantial. And that would be a portion of the development that the city should, cover the cost with its TIF funding. That could be a part of the public. Now you mentioned folding in the kind of green space in the middle with the parking lot. I'm not sure from the drawing I see here that it quite gets that done. I do want to make sure that, for example, if this is going to become the permanent home of West Ashley Farmers Market, which I think is a logical thing for us to do, that, you really plan that so that it flows and it opens up. You can have, of course, events where you just use the parking underground and keep the parking lot available for part of the community event, like the farmers market. So maybe that solves it. But the ability to expand that is important. And to pick up on a point somebody else made, in addition to that iconic kind of entryway to make the whole development speak about public art and have places throughout the development where maybe on a rotating basis, West Ashley artists get to express themselves and paint something or have a mural wall or that changes, or, you know, whatever we can all creatively come up with. I think the more we speak about public art and art with the development, that would be very positive and well accepted by the community. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. And
I'd like to build on some things the mayor said. Power, and I really appreciate.
sorry.
The first thing I'd like to comment is the tower idea that you and I have spoken about several times. I really appreciate your attention to precedents in the area. So we talked about the Victory, we talked about the old water tower that used to be in Moreland, we talked about fire stations, and if it ends up being a vertical element that's there, design element, something that echoes those. So I just wanted to reiterate that for those who weren't present for those discussions. Focusing on that as precedence to just echo things that we're all fond of and familiar with. The second thing is when you talk about the farmers market, and the workshop has been discussed as a precedent or example that people point to of what they want to see. They do have a market at the workshop. You may know the night bazaar that they do. And I'm just curious if you've spoken to, I guess, the organizers of that to find out some of the challenges. I don't know many of them, but it occurred to me that that market's kind of at night. This would be presumably during the day. The West Ashley Farmers Market is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if we have businesses, and presumably some city offices or civic functions, it looks like there could be some kind of conflict if it's not worked out in advance. So I would just be curious about what the process is for working through that to make sure it's very smooth.
We'd be happy to reach out to you.
Good points all the way around, folks.
Any other commission members have a comment, question, suggestion?
We're making great progress with this. I think that
The next step is to present this to city council.
There you go. So, correct, our next steps are to go to city council on April 26th. And then we are aiming for May 16th for the design review board. And then after that, we'll be going through the technical review committee to work through the city code aspects. And then the whole time between all this, we are working on the development agreement. Because we do want to make sure that when we do come to the end of our MOU, that we're in a good space, both in terms of the private sector and public sector to continue this partnership.
okay. Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, I wanted to share, somebody said something about dead pigs, and I've got another dead pig down 61 that the city was kind enough to help us with the Greenbelt project. And I just thought I would update the crowd real quickly that the PSD has finalized the footprint and the design for their new fire station. They will, HLA, our friends, Barry Whalen, those guys are working on the site design, and they expect to have preliminary design work in the next couple months, permitting next 12 to 14 months. They're hoping for construction by later next summer, which means fall, probably.
This is
This is
Old
the Church
Parsons
Creek, this is
Road.
Old
Old
Parsons.
Parsons Road.
This is Dead Pig 2.
Yes, which is, may have been deader longer than that. But this is, which is really very critical, that Councilman Moody is bringing to our attention in the city's partnership with the public service district and the county on getting that accomplished.
That's a great story. It's going to be one of the things that one hiccup, I should say hiccup, is that the county public works folks felt that ripping up the concrete well in advance, I'm not, you probably could tell me better why, but they thought that would be detrimental. I believe to Church Creek to have that ripped up and sitting there until, you know, they wanted to do that when the building was ready to be built on. And so that was one change that's happened. So it's still the concrete jungle, but hopefully that'll change. So getting these projects, these constituents just deserve the best. And they've looked at both of these lots for a long time, and it's time to give them the best.
I appreciate the update on that. And that's fitting into Plan West Ashley suggestion for that property. So it's returning an eyesore in West Ashley into something very positive for public use space. I just checked with Eric. We do not have any online public question or comment period. So is there anybody in the public I'm looking at now who wishes to make any comment? Ms. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins.
I'm Ann Jenkins, President Northbridge Terrace sometimes. Dinos, really want to thank you for this project, everybody that's involved with him and getting it done. And thank you for the city for pushing forward with it. I think it'd be a wonderful addition to West Ashley. I do want to push and strive for the historical part and context. I have mentioned to Dinos, and then I'm like glad to hear Donna say something about artists possibly being a part of a contest to fill that space in the front. Also, would we consider using sustainable things like tabby on the surface of the buildings, and maybe moving the tallest building to the furthest back so that you can see a developmental rise in the elevation of the buildings. If you had to go 10 floors up to see the river, it doesn't really matter what buildings are in the front, just a suggestion. And the pedestrian being able to get over there. If we have to get in our cars in Northbridge Terrace or Sandhurst or Orange Grove to get to use up those 200 parking spaces, that's kind of, you know, moot point. We can't walk over there safely. So appreciate it. Pedestrian bridge over North Bridge, maybe.
Working on Northbridge bike pedestrian as we.
Love it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your time.
But and that very good points, and I mentioned that earlier. Connectivity is a critical component of this overall plan. So if we get folks to bike or walk or stroll into that entrance, is very important. And the least number of cars there that we can use is important as well. So this, if you come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Thank you. Wonderful planning process, lovely delivery. My name is James Ward. I work over at College Preservation. As a landscape architect, I think I just want to iterate the need for green. We have several roofs here that are not green, just point that out. And we have the option to do some green walls, which could be really stunning. I think one of the things about West Ashley is greener than downtown in many respects. And I think we want to promote that to the extent that we can, along with pervious pavement and that sort of thing. So those things will contribute in a shall we say, real way, by people seeing that as being our priority going forward. And just building. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments, suggestions
from the public or from my commission members? Well, this has been a very long process. As we mentioned earlier, we began it in 2016, 2017, it's 2022. Eric's got the quick agenda timeline up for us on where we stand in the immediate future. So we appreciate all of them making this very special Monday night West Ashley Revitalization Commission meeting. Come to the City Council on April 26th, which is a week from today. Plus, everybody be safe, and thank you all for coming tonight. We are,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
hereby adjourned.
By the way, there's a green roof on the new picnic shelter that the Clemson students built for us in Ardmore.
Okay, cool. Yeah, very nice.